Every relationship that you ever have in your entire life is going to end at some point. Women specifically, definitely more so than men, just ignore or justify red flags. The first thing I think that people get wrong about trauma is if I thought that I couldn't add any value and this wasn't going to be good for me, I wouldn't be on this show. If you're getting a lot of external validation, then that's not self-trust. When the nervous system has learned that this moment is unsafe, that's completely counterproductive because you're telling them to sit in something that's unsafe.
All right, on the show today, Clay Moffat. So Clay is a performance coach, background in the military, in the oil and gas industry, NLP. I really like what he's got to say. He sent me some really interesting notes about trauma. Also, I think he's Australian, so there might well be some swearing between us, between me and him. So maybe not for the easily offended. He seems to have my kind of vibe. So Clay, welcome, mate.
I appreciate the intro and thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Let's dive in. Let's talk about trauma. What do people get wrong about trauma?
So, the first thing I think that people get wrong about trauma is they don't fully understand that trauma is synthesized by the nervous system, and the nervous system predicts it before it even happens, and it gets massively amplified by how the perception starts to shape your reality. And when there is this disconnect that people tend to have, and that people that are, let's say, more prone to experiencing trauma, for lack of a better word, what they start to do is they start to get themselves into loops, which start to open more loops, which then create a cascading effect. And then this perception starts to negatively amplify the effects of trauma on the body and then creates more of it as a byproduct.
Okay, let's break that down. So people have got a certain physiology around trauma, right? They're like stuck in
Absolutely.
fight, flight, freeze, whatever. But that's impacting their perception of the world. Like they're seeing the world as more dangerous, I guess, than it actually is. That's kind of one way I hear people talk about it. Would that be
That's relative. So
relative? Okay, go on.
it's nuanced. You're 100% right, and there's a slightly more depth.
Okay.
So the the reality is as dangerous as you perceive it to be for your nervous system. So if you perceive everything to be threatening,
Mm.
your nervous system responds as if everything is threatening. And
Yes.
so therefore, for that specific person, it is threatening.
Okay, so subjectively threatening, right? But I mean, like,
Very much so.
it's big different being in Ukraine, being bombed, and being in London and just perceiving the world as dangerous. I mean, there's a reality as well as a perception, though.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Not according to the person, though.
Okay, so from their sort of subjective experience, that's their reality. And how does
Right.
that create problems? I feel like people are quite sympathetic to trauma. You know, listeners are quite educated these days. They know Peter Levine, Gabor Mate, maybe Stephen
Sure.
Porges. What do you want to add? I think your work adds something to that. So other than the normal, like, hey, you know, we're stuck in this fight flight response that makes the world seem dangerous to us. What would you add to that?
How you interpret that and the level at which you start showing up will start further conditioning everything that's starting to happen.
Right, right. So I, for example, let's say I'm stuck in a trauma response. I'm interviewing you instead of going, hey, here's a cool guy from Australia with some things to say. How might I be messing up this interview, messing up this relationship?
All right, so let's take an example then. Let's say something comes up around a topic uh, of, let's just say, divorce. Okay? Let's say you didn't have the best upbringing. And so there might perhaps be some level of trust issue that you've developed because of the relationship you saw between your parents. So that's how you learned how to survive. So you learned that survival means shutting off, disconnecting, and your nervous system knows that, and notice something, your nervous system knows, right, that when this happens, it means this person's rejecting me, so I need to withdraw and disconnect. So I then say something to you that triggers a response inside your nervous system because that response was, for example, something or the tone or the way it was said is similar to how your father treated your mother, which then shut her down or separated her. And so then your nervous system learned to recoil in the same pattern. And so then you start recoiling in the same way from something that I've said.
Nice, nice. And I know you often you've sent me a note saying that sometimes people confuse just the unfamiliar with this as well, right? I've
Very
been
much so.
particularly thinking this in the context of immigration. So, like, I'm in a new country, I'm immigrant here. I've been thinking about this in context of the UK as well. That it used to be the average Slovenian is surrounded by people who are very familiar to them in terms
Right.
of mannerisms, religion, body language, tonality, language. Whereas I was in the only black barber shop in Slovenia yesterday. There's not many black people here.
Right.
And it happened to be the nearest one to my house. The guy's like, look, I'm not very good at cutting white people's hair, but there's no one around. If you want to risk it, it's cheap. I was like, yeah, fuck it. Guy from Ghana, he's got a Slovenian mom. So we're talking about how people perceive him. And there was another black woman in there. And he seemed to have a very relaxed attitude. But the girl was sort of saying, like, hey, people perceive her as different. And she clearly was in a loop where she's like, that's racism and they're bad and they're bad. And he wasn't in that loop. He
Right.
was, but they were both, let's say, perceived regularly as unfamiliar to the people of that country. This is kind of a hot topic. So, do you want to say anything about this
The-
familiarity?
my ex-wife is Brazilian, right? She lives in Sweden now with her partner. And when we were traveling to the States, I should call her my Caramello Queen, right? So she's very brown skinned,
Sure.
and she used to call me the top deck, right? Because I'm white vanilla, et cetera, et cetera. So like she's very, very easygoing. When we were in the US, specifically the US, people would say things to her. Or I called her to come over here. Well, I cut in front of her in the line. Like I didn't cut in front of her. I
Yeah.
walked up to her and then stood in front of her. And a black lady behind her turned around and said, "Excuse me, you're going to let that man use his white privilege?"
Wow. So they're
And,
perceiving it as a sort of violence, and you're just
yeah,
like, this is your wife, right? You're just
yeah.
joining her in the line.
Now, to a complete stranger, okay, yeah, sure. Like it looks like you got this jackass who's cutting in front of the line. But if you're paying attention to what's really going on, and the jackass cuts in front, and when he cuts in front, pinches her on the ass and gives her a kiss on the cheek, there might be some contextual thing that you're missing here if this jackass is cutting in front of you.
Yeah, I
And it
don't
was,
recommend that with strange Brazilian women you don't know. I don't
no, I
recommend.
wouldn't recommend it with any woman you don't know personally, but the point was her view of the world and what had shaped her reality
Yeah,
allowed her to miss all the evidence that proved the contrary.
right.
Right? So you could say that's cognitive bias. Absolutely. You could say that the perception was shaped by her reality, and that reality was very much what I would assume, especially what's coming across in the things I'm seeing out of the US, being shaped very much by a traumatic response to the way that the propaganda is being pushed out. Like it's us versus them. You're not a part of us. This is this. You're not that.
Yeah. There's a hypervigilance to trauma, which is, forgivable, certainly. And then there's a propaganda piece. There's a shaping of perception. It was so clear with these two people because they were both black, but one of them was really having this perception that the country was full of racism and was terrible. And the other guy just wasn't. And I said, can you give me an example? And the woman said, well, I stopped in my car yesterday. It was because I was black. And I was like, okay, how were you driving? She was like, well, I was a bit over the speed limit. I was like, okay, so maybe that's why you were stopped. Like that seems more reasonable to me. Like the police officer probably didn't know the color of the person in the car when they stopped them. So, but that was her perception, right? That was all because of that.
People tend to this is the massive projection thing, right? Where people start projecting outwards what they feel inwards. And if they feel threatened constantly by the world
Yeah.
and they see threats constantly by the world, and you know what? She's right. There are definitely police officers that would pull her over just because
Yes.
she's
Yeah.
right. The issue is, and the thing that I really try to break down and break people off of is it useful?
Right.
Is this actually a useful belief for you to have? Is this a useful response for your nervous system? Or is your nervous system getting you in more trouble than it's worth? Mine used to do that. Mine used to perceive everything as a threat. Like I didn't have a rough childhood by any stretch of the means. But for whatever reason, I veered off the path massively and took some really, really dark turns. And for the longest time, saw every single thing as a threat, all of it. Now, I happen to be smart enough and capable enough so that like most of the internal, it was mostly kept internally, and then I just withdraw. But it definitely had a huge impact on the course of my life until I started to step out of that and step into the ownership frame, as opposed to, oh, everyone's out to get me. It's like, okay, like what am I bringing to the table here? How did I create this?
Yeah, yeah. Do you think it is a subtle signal of danger when we hear foreign languages, when we see people who don't look like us? I mean, it's not really how we evolved, right? So I'm wondering if there's a subtle signal of danger in that for people like me living here, hearing Slovenian every day, or someone living in a, multicultural environment.
So I don't necessarily know that the language would be an issue. And I think oh, it's a yes and no answer. So yes, it's definitely possible. The no part of it is it's going to really depend on the resilience, the risk tolerance, and the stability and the emotional regulation capability of the person.
Yes.
So if someone is highly risk intolerant, then that would definitely have a massive negative effect on the nervous system.
Right.
Then there's the whole side where you go into things where you can become psychologically accustomed to a threat and not realize that your body is stressed and just go, oh no, it's this,
Right.
it's whatever, right? But your nervous system is still stressed.
Every time I speak to someone in London, any of the major US cities, to me, they look like they're in a threat response, but
Yep.
they would say they're fine.
Exactly. Because they've normalized it. So I'll do one better, not to black cat you, but look at Johannesburg, right? A lot of my family comes from South Africa. You got zero chance of me going over there and taking my kids over. Like, you crazy? Like, where it's normalized, where people normalize, oh, one of my friends, she went back there recently. Her auntie was, we don't need to get into the details, but graphically tortured and beaten and ended up dying, right? All because she lived in a certain complex which is known to have money, so they wanted to rob her and et cetera, et cetera. And when I spoke to my friend, right, she goes, yeah, that's just South Africa though. I'm like,
Right.
in, in what context is this normal? Like,
Yeah,
how?
yeah.
But people will rationalize it. It's like, oh, it's okay, it's fine. You know, if you said that in Australia, that happened to someone, there'd be an uproar. People would want like justice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ones would probably come out. Like, it's crazy. But
Someone
yeah,
in Slovenia yesterday said to me, I said, oh, it's a really safe country, really enjoying living here. My nervous system just rests here. There's a lot of nature, it feels very safe. People give off a lot of safety signaling, kids look happy. And she said, oh, no, it's really dangerous. I said, oh, I always say, can you give me an example? Because I want to know what people are talking about, right?
yep.
But, underneath the assessment, she said, oh, yeah, a couple of years ago, someone got punched in the face in the center of town and it really hurt. And I was like, okay, that's every
A
weekend
couple
in
of
Britain.
years ago.
A couple of years ago. I mean, I'm not saying there's not any crime here, but I think here in Croatia have the lowest crime in Europe statistically. And like it was in the newspapers that someone got badly punched outside a nightclub. And I'm like, that's not a news story in any UK town, let alone a capital city. So I was like, okay, that's her version of it's a dangerous world. I was like, okay, that's thanks for your point of view.
I think you really hit on something though. So that's the perfect setup. She would have very low risk tolerance, and her
Right.
nervous system would be completely thrown out of whack if she was to move into, let's say, central London, where things are popping off every 5 seconds, and you don't want to walk down the wrong alleyway because you could end up in like a really awkward situation, for example. So her nervous system would be out of factor, out of tolerance. Or the flip side of that is she would continue seeing everything as amazing and awesome and end up getting herself into a precarious position because she would bypass all the red flag warnings because she's not used to seeing them.
So this is
And she, oh,
complex. So you can see warnings where there isn't anything really to be scared of, but equally you can not see warnings because you're conditioned
yeah,
not to look out for them. There's a sort of fine line between sort of nervous system safety, which everyone seems to want, and sort of being naive, right? Like my Ukrainian friends sometimes think I'm sort of sweetly naive, you know? And or because they just like, oh, you cute, you've had a nice life, but by British standards, maybe not so much. Yeah.
So I think the word that you hit on the head there was naive,
Uh-huh.
right? So women specifically, definitely more so than men, just ignore or justify red flags. They're more in tune for whatever reason. I can't tell you why. I really don't know.
Mm.
But women are typically more in tune with their intuition, with gut feelings, and tend to be more accurate. Men tend to kind of disconnect from that for whatever reason. Like they're disconnected from the neck down, right? Like, okay, now I'll reconnect when it's safe. And if you look at the military kind of deconditions you to be sensitive from the neck down. And that's the whole point, right? That's not necessarily why every single man on the planet has it, but I think it just happens to be tendencies with how we operate. Now, having said that, when it comes to this naivety, what I see as the major thing as to why people ignore red flags is because they will override it based on how they perceive someone to be. So, for example, we've been friends for years, okay? And there's a sudden change, slow, but change in the way that I'm showing up, for example. And
Hmm.
I stop replying in the same way and I take more time and I don't really make an effort to catch up. And there are signs that I'm disconnecting and
Yeah.
I'm spreading away. And then, I don't know, let's say not only have we been friends for years, but we set up a business and the business has been going well. And then all of a sudden, one day I come to you like, yep, I got to exit, man. Like, I'm done. And you're like, whoa, no way. This caught me off guard. How is that possible? The reason that happens is once you put me in this box as like safe, loyal,
Yeah.
your brain will start ignoring the red flags that no, 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 Clay's loyal, Clay's safe, he's in this box. And it's
Yes.
that purpose that starts to mess people up and screw people over. And when you sandwich that with the fact that most people have zero formal training in any kind of body language or behavior profiling, so when they see those red flags, they don't know what the fuck they mean. And that becomes insanely powerful for your conscious mind to start overruling what's happening. Like Daniel Kahneman talks about the system one, system two. And this is always with the overriding and the overriding. Oh, no, I'm going to just, no, it's okay. No, it's safe. No, they'd never do that because of the labels and what we built up and thinking that these labels that we apply to people are permanent.
Right. Okay. So they're in a box. It's labeled that's efficient. That's easy. He's friend, not enemy. But I'm not actually looking at the data. I'm not actually looking at the behavior at that point. So when something happens, oh, I'm shocked. When actually everybody else can see all the little warning signs that are leading up to that.
There's that. And it's not even the person's fault. It's the brain's mechanism of doing what it does best,
Right.
which is
Sufficient.
conserving energy,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, like I can put this here, so now I don't need to continuously pay attention because I have to continuously pay attention. I'm burning energy which I could use on other things to survive. You're
Yep.
in the safe box. I don't need to monitor you 24/7 anymore.
Got it. We were talking about trust as well here. I think you have a little bit of a different take on this. So what's your perspective on trust?
Slightly different to most people, yeah. So I don't perceive trust to be a trait. I don't see it as a character trait.
Uh-huh.
The sharpest way that I can put it, it is mutual alignment or a
Okay.
shared mutually beneficial outcome. So I trust everyone without question, everyone on the planet. Now, does that mean I trust them to do the right thing by me? No. I always trust people to do the right thing by themselves. So let's take a perfect example right now. If you thought that I would not add any value to your show, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Sure.
Does that make you selfish? No. Does that make you
Yeah.
rude? Absolutely not. Now, if I thought that I couldn't add any value and this wasn't going to be good for me, I wouldn't be on this show.
Our goals are aligned. We don't need to trust each other. You want to have a
Exactly.
little bit more exposure. People come on because they want to sell a book or they want to just be known a bit better. Great. Develop their ideas. I have guests on because it benefits me, my podcast, to have value. I learn stuff personally. Everyone wins, so I don't need to trust you, right? It's just, are we
Exactly.
aligned in our goals?
And that's my definition of trust. Trust
Interesting.
is alignment. And
Nice.
alignment is not permanence. And that's where people get screwed. They think, okay,
Oh,
I
okay,
entered.
are we still aligned?
Let's like dive into like the oldest contract around, marriage. So
Hmm.
I signed this deal with you, and not necessarily with you specifically. I mean, we can if you want, it's fine.
Be nice,
But
Clay. Be nice. I'm into blondes though, so go for it. Yeah, let's imagine a world where you could get a catch like me. Yeah,
there you
go
go.
for it.
So in this fantasy utopia that I'm thinking about, there's this contract that's signed. Now, I'll use a specific example. So when I got married to my ex, my understanding from death to us till death do us part meant like when one of us died. Her understanding was when the emotional connection was no longer there for her. So with regards to my wife, how we created this separation, there was no longer a mutually beneficial outcome that we both wanted. So therefore, she could trust there was no longer in my best interest to continue with the relation, and I could trust it was no longer in hers.
Yes.
So as this continues to build, no matter what the relationship, because everything's a relationship regardless of the time frame, right? And every relationship that you ever have in your entire life is going to end at some point.
Right. Yeah, they leave or die, or you leave or die.
Exactly. So therefore, they're all going to end at some point. And if they're all going to end at some point, there's no point in assuming or putting it into your head that it's going to be this permanent thing.
Yeah,
And if
permanence
you
causes
believe in
suffering,
like
doesn't it? It's a
moving on, right? Like
belief.
it just does it doesn't connect, it doesn't mash. So therefore, look for the signs, pay attention to what's happening, get familiar with some subtle things in body language so that when the red flags, so to speak, start coming up, you can actually start to go, oh, I've been trained in this. I know that this cluster of things starts to indicate that they're hiding something or they're not telling me something. So we're clear. That doesn't mean that they're lying. It might mean that they just feel afraid to say something. And that's
Right,
a
right, right.
huge thing that like you can get into when you come into behavior profiling and everything like that. But the point is simple. Trust is all about a mutually beneficial goal. And when that is no longer there, you can guarantee that trust is not going to be there in the way that you expect, and that they may not, but they may disappear.
Yeah, nice, nice. Okay, so I think I'm gonna have a different take, but I'd add, I think they're complementary. So I've always seen trust not as a moral assessment. You know, if someone says, "Don't you trust me?" Normally they want
Yep.
to screw you over, I found. But it's like I say, it's not moral. I see it as more predictive. So I'll give you an example. I was meeting a guy for the first time for coaching at 7:30 a.m. at the gym today. And it's the first time I met up with him. Young guy. Sometimes young guys aren't reliable. You know, that's my experience of predicting young guys. But this guy was there 2 minutes early. You know, he was waiting for me when I arrived. And now, like, I'm going to trust more that he'll be there early next time just based on his past behavior. So I think that's prediction of behavior model, which I think can be additional to what you're saying, which, yeah, it's also aligned with his goals to be on time. You know, that's not contradictory to what you said, but that's how I tend to see trust. And also it's domain specific, right? Like I don't trust this guy to drive a car because I've never seen him drive, but I do trust him to turn up on time for the gym. So I don't want to generalize my trust to him yet.
Right. And that's where you have a total alignment with what I'm presenting, is that it is context dependent
Yeah.
massively. And that context is king. And that the behavior will start to show you when that trust is starting to wane.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Let's slaughter some more holy cows before we run out of time then. So I think we both enjoy murdering holy cows. Sorry to my Hindu listeners. So boundaries. Um, a lot of people think trauma healing means just being open to everyone. Agree or disagree?
Completely disagree.
Okay, why?
When you're embarking on the path of healing from trauma, the fact that you're embarking on the path of healing from trauma means that it's highly likely your nervous system hasn't really figured out how to fully self-regulate. One. Number two, who is someone that you can trust to regulate with? And three, if you haven't fully healed yet, the likelihood of you syncing with someone that will take advantage of you and will be able to spot you in that healing is much higher. Therefore, the chances of you repeating a similar situation that got you stuck in the first place is exponentially higher. So it just becomes like this cascading effect of like, oh, it's going to smash me, it's going to smash me here, and then it's take me further down here.
Nice. Nice. In terms of boundaries, it's interesting. I've seen a trend here, right? Particularly a lot of female students, they're like, we did book on people pleasing and boundaries. It's been really popular. The problem I now have is I think there's a group of women out there who are over boundaried. So and it's really difficult when I'm teaching because I go, half the audience need to learn boundaries and, to understand that trauma healing involves boundaries and not just being open.
Yep.
Particularly if they're in spiritual kind of worlds, it's all about being open, all about saying yes. But the other half are sort of over boundaried, unattractive boss bitches. And they seem to be drawn to the opposite work that they need. And it's very difficult teaching because I'm trying to simultaneously give almost two opposite messages. Thoughts?
So the current world that we live in seems to have a massive polarization going on, no
Hmm.
matter what the sphere is, whether it's politics, whether it's coaching, whether it's sports, whether it's wealth, it doesn't matter. It just seems to be a massive migration and destruction of the middle ground and pushing further and further to the extreme so that this middle percentile where you used to have the majority of people is starting to thin and you're starting to get a U curve instead of a bell curve.
Yes.
So what I've started to notice that became useful for me was to stop catering for everyone. I'm not
Okay.
suggesting you do that. So
No,
we're clear.
sure. So you can niche around your business. Like there's a
Not
kind
even, not even
of
that.
like, or even what? Even more? Say more?
No, it's just more simple. It had nothing to do with the business. What I found was the mental load I was putting on myself, I'd actually started creating by default almost a people-pleasing mentality because I was trying to like, well, I don't want to exclude them and I don't want to exclude these people and I don't want to do this. So by trying to help people stop the thing that they were doing, I had inevitably kind of created that mechanism inside myself in the way that I was delivering trainings. So what became useful for me was some people are going to hate me, some people are going to love me. I know for a fact that I can't help everyone. So let me just help the people that I can help with and trust that there's going to be someone else out there that can help the people that I can't.
Right.
And it just became like a massive weight off my shoulders. And then I can now focus and give fully to the people that are there and do resonate, and then allow other people to take care of the rest.
Exclusion is good. Exclusion is love. Exclusion creates a better product, a better coaching service for the people you can help. And then, you know what? There's someone out there who can help the others. There's a trust. There's a sort of trust in that as well. If trust has become our kind of theme today. Yeah. Let's talk about self-trust. That's an aspect of trust we haven't talked about. Some people think, if I develop self-trust by everyone telling me I'm great, so I need constant validation, like American parenting. Or maybe I tell myself and I have my affirmations, I can do it. I'm really good. I'm going to try and brainwash myself into thinking that. Is there another way of looking at it?
There's multiple ways to look at it. The issue is if you're getting a lot of external validation, then that's not self-trust because it does not come from yourself. So I don't see anyone that feels good about themselves because they need external validation as having a very strong and developed
Not
self-awareness.
robust.
Self-confidence is not really the right word I'm looking for, but
It's a bit of a house of cards, right? As well. It's delicate. It's not a robust system you'd recommend for anyone to
exactly.
be dependent upon others' validation because that can
And
be rude.
their self-image is just horrible because the second that let's say I had a friend growing up, his parents were extremely strict. And he worked his ass off to nail it every subject. Got ducks at the school. Brilliant. Well done, man. And he's like, okay, now I'm going to work my ass off and get my university degree. His parents were proud of him for that. And then he really hated his job, but his parents were proud of him. Then when his mum passed away, and he's like, okay, why am I doing this again? Because
Right.
she's not here anymore. And so he
Right.
spent like the last 20 years trying to do these things to impress other people because he was getting this external validation. Now, the internal validation is where I pride myself on, okay, how do I know I've done a good job? It's better than the job I did last time. And that's the only metric that matters. It's very nice to get feedback from external sources. It's very useful, and I would argue crucial to get feedback from external sources to help with your growth.
Yes.
That doesn't define or develop your self-image, though, and it cannot be your source of self-trust that you know you're good at something.
Right, right. I had a new coach talk to me a couple of days ago. He said, "Mark, I'm really nervous about starting coaching. I was coaching them as a supervisor as on a course of coaching course we run, and I said I'm really nervous about starting coaching. I'm like, good, because you're shit at it. Like you've just begun coaching. You're not going to be good yet. I'm like, okay, are you like so nervous you can't practice? You can't try with some free volunteers? They're like, no, 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 I can still do some free volunteers. I'm not taking the money. I was like, great, okay, that's fine. And then eventually you'll have practiced a bunch and you'll be good. And then you can stop being nervous. Like, well, can you give me a technique? I was like, well, I can give you a centering technique to manage your state to make yourself a little bit less nervous. But I was like, the main thing is you practice and get fucking good. Like to me, that was the obvious way they should build their relaxation around it, not some sort of technique.
The issue I've found when it comes with training people is that the people at the very start place their trust in the technique, not their ability,
Okay.
because the technique is what carries them through. So I've got this
Uh-huh.
special language pattern, Mark, and when I
Right.
say this language pattern, it creates this effect. So I know if I can say this language pattern, I'm going to be able to help this person. And then they become, what's the saying? Uh, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Right. Right.
So they apply that technique to everything, right? Oh, you've got PTSD. Boom. Oh, you've got a fear of heights. Boom. Oh, you've got relationship issues. Boom. And it's just like across the board, it becomes everything that, and like, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not how this works. Like, pump the brakes, take it easy, and just pay attention to the person. They're going to give you everything you need.
I think this is why people jump modalities as well, because they learn a modality that they see work. Like, say, I don't know, you see Gabor Mate doing compassionate inquiry. It looks really good. He's super experienced. He's a therapist of 50 years experience. It looks great. You go, I want that modality. And then you learn it, and it doesn't work quite so well for you because you haven't had 50 years experience doing
Of
it.
course.
Crazy. And then you go, well, that doesn't work. Let's try somatic experiencing. Then you go look at Peter Levine. He's had 50 experience. So he looks really good doing his coaching demo. And then you're like, oh, and then you try that, then that one doesn't work. And then people are on this endless search for the perfect technique rather than getting good at one thing, rather than put the reps in for a few years.
Right. I think it's just a standard. So entrepreneurs have shiny object syndrome when it comes to marketing the product, and they're going to try Facebook ads, and then they're going to try Instagram ads, and then they're going to try YouTube, and then they're going to try this. And coaches have the exact same thing when it comes to techniques. It's no different. Oh, I'm going to learn hypnosis. I've done a 3-day course in hypnosis. Now I'm a qualified hypnotist. Like I can hypnotize anyone. I'm great. So now I'm going to do an NLP course. Okay, so you did an NLP course. And now I'm going to do a CBT course. Okay, you've done CBT. And now I'm going to do like,
And
dude.
what they miss, actually, sometimes to link what you just said is I've seen a lot of coaches who learn a new technique when what they really should be doing is getting better at marketing. Right? They
Yeah.
think if they knew that their business will be full if only they have the right technique. And that can help your business to have a technique people recognize or whatever. But ultimately, the client doesn't give a shit what your technique is. They just care about the result you can give them. So,
Exactly.
what would be your advice for all the coaches listening on marketing? You've done well. I've heard you give good advice on this topic. So, I'm a coach. I'm out there. I kind of know a few techniques. I've had a few years' experience, but I don't really have a full client roster. What would be your advice for them?
So my whole marketing business kind of came crashing down, mostly because I changed the way that I operate. Once I had kids, I didn't want to travel anymore. So prior to having kids, I used to speak.
Okay.
And without fail, every time I spoke, I would land 20, 30 clients from the audience without fail.
Hmm.
Right? It's just people can see you, they can connect with you, like, okay, like I think this
Trust
guy,
again. Yeah. Yeah.
right? Then that kind of shifted, and I was fortunate enough that I had built enough of a reputation from that I just got referrals.
Hmm.
And so then what it became about was getting so good at my processes that I became a referral machine, and I built up a referral engine. And that's kind of what has carried me through. It's just people referring clients to me because of the changes they're getting because of how their life shifts.
And do you help that in it? Because I know people who improve their referrals by saying little things to clients or giving a card or, like saying to like, hey, do you know anyone who might like this? Is there a way you increase referrals?
I don't know that it's necessarily a way that I increase them. I definitely am proactive when it
Mhm.
comes to it. And my clients are kind of funny. So, like, yeah, I don't really know that you want to deal with most of the people that I deal with, so I don't refer them to you. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, well, like I don't want to waste your time with these people that like just don't really care. So I don't really refer a lot of people to. I said, that's fine. Like if that's what you think, that's what you think. I'm not saying go refer people. What I am saying is if you come across someone that you think needs my help
Yeah.
and they're asking for help, then by all means refer me.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to go out and tell the world like, oh, you need to go
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
you need to go
Yeah.
do this. I'm not really interested in that.
Hmm.
But the
Just
people that actually want my help, I think that is definitely the key
yeah.
differentiator. And I fully encourage my clients go, hey, this is what I've experienced with them. This is what has helped with me. And not, it's not why I wrote the book, but it's actually kind of why I wrote the book.
Hmm.
And I've had clients say to me, like, I wanted to refer you before, but most people can't afford 2.5, 3 grand a month.
So they
So,
can now give their friends the book kind of thing or recommend the book.
and
Do you
that's
want
what
to
they're doing
say
now.
say what the book is?
So I kind of didn't even want to go there, but
No,
I
it's
did.
okay. You can plug it.
So the book is called The Trust Trap, and the subtitle is Stop Screwing Yourself Over and Rewrite the Rules of the Game.
Hmm.
That's the essence of it is, which is kind of funny why we spoke about trust today. Um, and the whole idea of the book is about this perspective that Mark and I were speaking about before with regards to the idea of trust and how I've seen so many of my clients get burnt. And I've been burnt before. I lost $500,000 on an app that ended up crashing and burning, self-funded, like just crashed. And obviously there's relationships and a whole bunch of other things that are gone. And if you rewind 20 years ago, I was completely in the victim seat. Like it's the world against me. I deserve this. I didn't get it. And like I look back now, it's just funny. And I'm like, it's sad, but it's funny because I've managed to grow through it. But with regards to recruiting more clients or getting more clients, the biggest thing I can say is go put yourself out there. Now, if that means put yourself on social media, go do that. Like, to be honest, I'll admit something that I definitely wasn't planning on. This right now is me doing something I'm extremely uncomfortable with.
Okay, you seem pretty
So,
relaxed, so well done.
uh, no, I'm comfortable on camera. I wrote the book because I was very close to never being able to coach again, right? I'm blind in my left eye. I lost the vision in my right eye in about December last year, and I had to have surgery to bring it back. And the surgery that I had to go through was a surgery that took my left eye, so I couldn't see. So once I booked that surgery, I had a 4 week window before I had the surgery on my right eye. And if they screwed it up, I'd be in like permanent darkness.
Wow,
So
scary.
the the book was my way of being able to coach people if I wasn't actually able to continue coaching. And so I had a very visceral deadline of like, you need to get this shit finished and you need to get it published within 3.5 weeks. Otherwise, it's not going to be done. And so that was actually the reason for writing the book. And then now it's spawned a whole lot of things because to me it's an extremely powerful message and I'm getting a lot of really good reviews from it. So the uncomfortable side of things is I have zero interest in becoming famous. I have every interest in the world in this book getting to 13, 14, 15 million people and transforming their lives. That I have a very real mission for. And I don't like being on social media. I know this isn't social media, so I'm well aware, but I hate social media. I can't
It's
stand it.
toxic. It's toxic. I just did a class for my mentees yesterday saying social media can be used for marketing this way. Be prepared for the mental health problems that come with it if you do this. Like literally telling them like, hey, this is a blow to your mental health. Almost certainly, here are some ways to partially mitigate that mental health
Yep.
aspect, but here's what it will do to you. I've been there. I don't recommend it. And it can still be a great marketing tool if you use it this way, but you don't even have to use it. So many coaches feel they have to use it. We have
Right.
people on this podcast who either have no social media or like me, somebody else does their social media. Like I've set my business up that way. I just
Yep.
I can record the videos and don't even get involved in the shit shows, you know? And
Yep.
it's yeah, and I have successful coaches. I've got no social media. They've just got great referrals from corporate clients with plenty of money who aren't on Instagram. You know, the
There you go.
CEO of Unilever is not on Instagram on a daily basis. I guarantee you that. So
And that's the truth of it, man. It comes down to how committed are you? Like if you want to make it as a coach, how much have you committed? And that's why I got out of my own way. I'm like, okay, I'm going to reach out to anyone and everyone that I know, and I'm going to get this message out as much as I can. If that means I've got to get on podcasts, then I'm going to get on podcasts, and I'm going to put myself out there. And if I happen to get some level of fame and I become like a Z-list celebrity along the way, then whatever. That's part and parcel of that's something that I have to do to get my message out there.
I'd say that's a sacrifice. You know, I say to my mentees, minimize the fame you get for the success that comes with it. And you might have to sacrifice and have, you know, I get recognized maybe once a week in a major city, or like if I go to a yoga class or a coaching convention, probably
Yep.
someone say hi. That's very low level fame, and I like it. It's fine. It's kind of nice. Someone comes, says, "Oh, I listened to your podcast, or I read your book." But I wouldn't want to be more famous because I've coached famous people,
Yep.
and it sucks.
It's
They
not
can't go
enough.
into a supermarket. They can't trust anyone. Like it's majorly like I'd say like the minimal fame for the success you want is the
Exactly.
solution. Like I need to be a certain amount out there doing what I do so clients recognize me. But even out there, it's like, well, out where, right? I want to be out where there are potential clients and
Yep.
nowhere else. I don't want to be doing talks at places where I'm not going to get customers, right? Like otherwise
Right.
I'm just wasting my time and energy. I'm getting more famous than I need to be. Fuck that. So yeah, it's a
Exactly.
different way of thinking about it. I think young people think about it like fame in itself is good. In my experience, it does give something. Like you can get some free shit, you know. Like when I was
Yep.
in Australia, I got a lift from the airport from someone who listened to my podcast. It's nice, but it doesn't give you that much, and it takes quite a lot. Takes quite a lot.
Yeah.
Let's do another holy cow, another sacred cow. Mindfulness and being present. There's a whole thing like, hey, we should be present the whole time. Being present is you got to be 100% present all the time, everywhere, which is impossible in my experience. But yeah, why might that not be a good thing?
Being 100% present all the time.
Yeah.
Hey, might that not be a good thing?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Uh, when people talk about staying in the moment, and when the nervous system has learned that, like, it is actually unsafe, um, you being in the moment creates you to stay in this space that is unsafe to your nervous system. And so,
One more time, just so I got that.
sure. So when we're talking to someone who is recovering from betrayal, let's use that as a specific lens, okay? Or they're going through like a deep emotional hurt, or even maybe some physical trauma, right? And you tell them just stay in the moment, just sit with it, man. Just sit with it. When the nervous system has learned that this moment is unsafe, that's completely counterproductive because you're telling them to sit in something that's unsafe. And you're further conditioning the nervous system to kind of be familiar with what's unsafe. And if you condition the nervous system to be familiar with what's unsafe, then what it starts to crave is that unsafety, for example. The classic example is I used to work at a fair few retreats down south of the island in Phuket. And there were a group of women from certain area in Europe, I don't necessarily need to mention any names, that all had a very similar presenting problem. And I'll sum it up for you in one sentence. He only hits me because he loves me.
Right. Okay.
Now that is being conditioned for an unsafe environment. And the nervous system is now getting used to having that equal safety. So being
Right.
present
People
in an unsafe
replicate what's
environment.
familiar, not what's good, right? That becomes familiar. That's what they know, even if it's terrible for them. Logically, they know it's terrible for them, but they keep replicating it because it feels like home. It feels familiar.
So I'm going to push back. Logically, they wouldn't even agree with you that it is unsafe.
Wow. They would justify it. They would say, like, hey, this is
Oh,
why
yeah,
they've developed this belief
massively,
system around it.
massively. Their friends were the ones that said you should go speak to Clay. And I'm like, what? She didn't want. No, this is a thing. Like she grew up watching her dad hit her mum, and her mum would say, "It's just how he loves me. It's just what he shows. Like we've got to be respectful. We've got to do this." And this is why conditioning plays such a role. And her seeing that and seeing her mum cower and do this, and then saying to her, "This is normal,"
It's a belief
now
system.
makes it normal. And
Yeah.
then the nervous system's like, "Oh, okay, that's how you act as a woman and a wife. So this is normal."
Is there a cultural aspect there? I mean, I've come across that with individuals, and certainly it's a bit more common among certain communities in the UK, like working class, whatever. But if it doesn't reveal client confidentiality, what cultural background is more prone to that? Let's say.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily a cultural background. It just happened to be that at this retreat I was working from, the
Okay,
majority of the women that were coming over in that group were Russian, Ukrainian, like
that's what I
Eastern
was
European.
thinking. Yeah, I mean, there is domestic. I mean, domestic violence isn't even illegal in Russia unless you hospitalize someone. So they
Right, I
changed
know.
the law a little.
It's
It's like
brutal.
you can hit a woman as long as she's not actually broken a bone. It's not a crime, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And, you know, people in glass houses th shouldn't throw stones. And so who am I to say it's right or wrong? I just know that when someone comes to work with me, their subconscious is glinting at the fact that it's wrong. Emotionally, they think it's okay. They've normalized it. Logically, it's okay. The cognitive
Yeah.
biases tell them it's okay. But they've come to see me, and this is usually what I'd have to argue with them about. And I say, look, I'm not saying that it's wrong that it's happening. I'm telling you that you're telling me it's wrong. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. You're sitting here in
Right, the
my office,
behavior. Yeah.
having a conversation with me about something, and you're trying to justify it to yourself because you continue to allow it to happen. And that's why we're having this conversation. There is a massive part of you that knows that for you, this is not healthy and you don't want it to continue. Yet something's happened along the way where you conditioned it to be normal and this is okay.
hmm hmm Yeah. I'll say it's wrong. If you hit a woman, you're a bitch. I'll say that. Anything else you want to say on trust? That seems to become like a trauma and trust is our theme, I think. So
Yeah.
before we tell people where to find you, let's wrap that up. Anything else on trust that you wanna put out there?
I think they kind of go hand in hand, depending on how you define trust. So if you continue trusting in the way that trust is a character trait, it's a morality thing, then you're likely going to associate traumatic events with trust and how you were betrayed. So in my mind and in what I teach, betrayal doesn't exist to me. That doesn't mean that there aren't nefarious people out there like sociopaths, psychopaths, and narcissists, like actual clinical narcissists, not the woman or the guy. Oh, yeah, that person's such a narcissist, and then making their own judgment when they've got no right to do so. But when you remove those three elements from the whole spectrum and you look at the general arc of the storyline of your life, 99.99% of the people that come into your life are not out to get you, screw you over, or fuck you over. They are out there to do what's right by them. And if you can take a step back and start paying attention to what is being presented now, exactly in line with what you said, as a prediction model based on past behavior, how is this behavior showing up now? Okay, it's segmenting, it's separating, it's diverging. Okay, I'm paying attention to what's happening. The slight divergence is figuring out what is beneficial to the other person.
Hmm.
This is
Hmm.
where it can become slightly complex. So, for example, someone that wants to be seen as a good person could potentially jump in front of a car and throw a little girl out of the way so the little girl doesn't die.
Right, so it's still
It
in
could
their
have been.
interest if they rate the
Exactly.
safety, if they rate the social status of saving a little girl above their own physical safety.
Exactly. So it really depends on how well you can read people, profile people, and then determine what is actually in their interest. And when you can break down what's in their interest and how they know they're going to get it, and it's very clear paths to do that, then you can really test your alignment and recognize that this is a huge thing. Context is everything. So if you are in a startup and you're both working 80 hours a week, want to get this thing off the ground, and you're grinding and grinding and grinding, and then 3 years later you made all this money, and now your business partner is having his first child and no longer wants to work 80 hours a week. Well, he's not betraying you. You guys have
Yeah.
taken care of the safety need. You've taken care of the survival mechanism, like the
Hmm.
money's there. Now he wants to create his belonging need. He wants to satisfy that. There's nothing that has changed. You've ticked off levels on Maslow's hierarchy. You're moving forward, so now you can keep going. So if you pay attention to what's going on in the greater scope of things, it allows you to dial into the micros so that you prevent ever getting betrayed in the first place because you're 3 steps ahead of everyone else. You know the moves they're going to make, you know where their brain's going, you know what matters to them, and you can start predicting and navigating things and continue your success.
Very nice. We need to wrap up. It's been good. Good perspectives, interesting perspectives. You're clearly an experienced coach. Do you want to mention the book and maybe your website? Where do people find you?
So the book again is The Trust Trap. You can find that at trusttrapbook.com. That's pretty simple. And then the website, if you want to get in contact, is claymoffat.com. And yeah, if you want to get in
It's
contact, please do. If you don't, no problem whatsoever.
Moff for Foxtrot, AT for Tango, Clay
Yes,
Moffat.
sir. One T, not two.
All right. Clay, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.